And so in terms of monument features, just a very quick high-level summary. We'll have some questions just to get started, just to make sure that I'm answering the things that you'd like me to cover. Then I'm going to do basically a monument feature review by going through and doing a monument project, kind of soup to nuts, start to finish. And again, the beautiful thing about a webinar is that you guys are in the comfort of your locations, and I'm here, but you can still ask questions, and I can hopefully demonstrate in a clear way. So I encourage questions, and with that being said, let me ask right off the top. I know there's one of the popular topics is creating proofs and presentations with granite in the backgrounds, and sort of superimposing in different scenes, such as maybe in a cemetery or something like that. But does anybody have any burning questions that you'd like to get answered while we're meeting here together?
My only question is this presentation utilizing CS, or are you using CP?
I have my software set to Omega CS. So everything that I have in terms of what I'm showing you here is based upon Omega CS. And there's actually a setting in Omega that allows you to emulate Omega CS. So yeah, I'm doing Omega CS. And so everything that I'm doing here, you should be able to do with your Omega CSs. Conversely, if you do have Omega CP, or if you have a Gerber Omega layout station, the layout station includes all the design capabilities of Omega CP. So you'll be able to do either with Omega CS or with a layout station or Omega CP. So good question.
I'm sorry. I thought that. So this is not for Composer, right? This meeting?
Yeah, this is using Composer. Absolutely. Yep.
Oh, okay, I have a question. So something maybe that you will go through it, run through it. I'm clipping an image. Let's say I import an image of granite, and then I have an outline of path, and I want to make that image fit inside the path. Will you be going through that also?
I sure will. Great question. Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
And on my next page, I'll show you in a little more detail some of the things that I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to talk about reaction, which is kind of, we used to call it Smart Edit, but just it's the way that Composer kind of organizes and structures different functions. So if you do text, then you do an outline, then you do a shadow. Just want to make sure that we touch base about using reaction to get the most out of the system. So you can do less work, and Composer does more work. As I said, we'll do a monument project. Along the way, I'll talk about text. I'll talk about kerning and spacing, etc., all things about text. Of course, a TrueType font converter and font designer. I won't actually design a font, or font designer, as it says there. I'll correct that before I send it out. We also have the border tool and a feature that you may or may not know about, but that I kind of like, which is called Surround. And it's basically a way to get a border around text and to have the size of the border automatically adapt to the size of your text. So make sure I talk about that. Spacing to a value, which is something that Amber had a question about, and she wasn't fully aware of it. Importing vector clip art, AI, EPS, PDF, what's the best way to import stuff. Importing images, such as a JPEG or a TIFF, using outline distortion and other vector effects. And then, as I go through this project and presentation, I'll add different components to it using clipping paths and images, and then saving it out to a PDF or a JPEG, et cetera, et cetera. So with that being said, did it spawn any questions along the way again, or we'll just kind of go through the project and see how it goes?
My only main problem with reaction is it causes some funky results sometimes. For instance, yesterday I copied a flower component from another design, moved it over to a design I was working on, and it caused all the other lines, all the other cut lines in the design I copied to have two images, one lying right under the other one. And of course, none of the fill will work right until you go in and remove it and only leave one image. I can't understand why it would do that.
All right, and maybe you can try to help me rebuild the scenario, and then I'll try to show a different way to try to accomplish the same thing. How's that? But I've definitely heard that about reaction before. So that's why I always reaction is very powerful, but it can cause some it can cause you some guff in some cases. So we'll just sort of do best practices for reaction if that's okay. So
good enough.
All right, great. So let me get here to my Composer, and you see all my other screens that I have up here. And as I said before, if I go into my Tools menu, Tools, and then all the way down at the bottom is Options, Tools, Options, you see that I have Emulate Omega CS turned on. So everything that I do should be based upon what you can do in CS, okay? And the first thing that you might notice is that I sort of have a frame here. When I do File New, I get a frame up here. And I was just at the ISA, International Sign Association trade show, and somebody said, it'd be really great if you could add a feature where you can have a frame when you start up. You can add a frame. So, for example, if there's a particular stone size that you always sort of want to have as a reference there, you can go into the Tools menu, and all the way down at the bottom is Options. And then you have the ability here under the View tab, you see that there's a baseline and that there's also a reference frame. So you can turn on this reference frame checkbox. And then if you go to Layout, you can set the size of your frame. So if there's a common size for a stone that you might want to use just as a rough reference, maybe it's 24 by 36, or what should I type in here for a decent frame size for length and height? 24 by 36? Okay. And I can go ahead and apply that or OK. If you want it to stay that way forever, click on Preference and Save Current Page. And then now I have just a rough frame. So if I do a File New, I have my new frame size in here. And again, it's just as a reference, and the bottom left corner is at 00. So that's just kind of the beginning of my project. All right, so next what I'm going to use, of course, just to sort of build out this basic project for my various components of the monument, I'm going to use my border tool. And the reason that I like the border tool, of course, is because I can go ahead and type in the specific values when I go ahead and use the border tool. So you guys mostly using the border tool or the rectangle tool when you start off and type something in?
No, I use rectangle and then absolute size.
I'm sorry, say that again. That was a good answer, but too many of them.
I use the rectangle tool and then absolute size it and then distort the tops to whatever I want it to be.
Okay. So with the border tool, and when you use the rectangle tool and absolute size, what do you type in for like the base pedestal for a size? What should I type in for a height?
I don't. I just draw a rectangle and then go to absolute size and size it.
Okay. So with decorative border, I'm going to type in a height of 6 inches by 24 inches. And again, if I'm typing in dumb numbers, you guys have to let me know. So there's my first component. And the nice thing about it is, unlike if you use absolute size, and you want something of a different size, you'd have to go into absolute size and change it again. But with the border tool, I can go ahead and I can just double click on it with my regular pointer. So make sure that you have your regular pointer available. And then just double click on the border, and I can change this to be 8 inches by 36 inches if I want to, for example. So I just like the border tool because it gives me the ability to type in the parameters, and I feel like it saves me a step or two as I sort of design my different components along the way. The other nice thing is that if you want to with the border tool, you can also add a rounded corner type. So if I want to put a radius on that of like a 0.5 inches or something like that, you now notice that when I go to my border tool, I have a radius down there, a radius on all 4 of my quarters. And if I don't like that, I can just go back in and double click and turn that off, or I can just do undo to get it back to my square corners. So next up is that if I want to add another component to this, I'm going to go to my border tool again. So just fly out this toolbar over on the left, and here's my border tool. Or if you guys are into keyboard shortcuts, you can do B for border, and it brings it right up. And here I'm just going to sort of type this in. So my first one was 6 by 36, 8 by 36. So for my next one, I'm going to make it to be a little bit taller. So I'm going to do 36 high, and I'll do 25 long. So now I have that second component there, and so of course the next thing that you have to do is that you have to go in here and you have to align them. So you want to make sure that you get it nice and tight, nice and close. But one of the features that we do have in Omega is I'm actually going to turn off that background. Sorry. Tools, Options, View, and I'm going to turn off my reference frame. There we go. All right. So one of the features we have in Omega, and we've had it in Omega for a while now, if you go into the Arrange menu, of course, we have Justify and we have Spacing. So the first thing that I might do is to do a Justify, and I want those two to be centered on each other. But the other thing that we have, if you want to automatically have objects so they abut each other, if you go back into Arrange, and we have Spacing. And one of our modes for spacing is to, first of all, I'm going to tell it that I want it to space up and down. I don't want it to space left and right. So I'll make sure that I have up and down turned on. Turn off automatic, and what is the vertical distance that you want between your objects? I want my vertical distance to be 0. So I go ahead and I turn off automatic, set my vertical distance to 0, and now I have those just perfectly abutting to each other. So I don't have to worry about moving it precisely and having that little bit of a gap. So as I zoom way in on this guy, you notice that they are just nice and abutted to each other without any wiggle room whatsoever. So. All right? So far so good?
Yep.
Sure. Okay, good. I'm just going to copy this guy and go into my other one. There we go. And by the way, this is sort of what we're headed for, just in terms of our ultimate finished product. So you notice that I do have my granite. I have my shapes. I have a cross that's a little bit different color, a lighter color with the different blasting. I have my text in here that's outlined, and then I have a different stone and another stone underneath. I also have a nice flower display over on the side, and the flowers are in a clipping path as well. And then ultimately, it's all superimposed on a background with grass or what have you. So, John, is this kind of what you were asking about?
Yeah, this is one of the things I was looking for personally.
Okay.
A lot of dealers want to have a visual for their clients, and this would be a nice way to close a sale.
Okay, good, perfect. All right, so that's what I'm shooting for as we proceed through this. Okay, so the next up, and so far so good. Oh, next up, what I want to do, of course, is I want to add my add the SERP to the top. Am I using the proper term?
Yes.
So add the curvature to the top. So what I'm going to do for that is that I'm going to go into my Tools menu, and then we have Distortion. And for distortion, what we're looking for is the ability to sort of add a curve to the top. So we have that as we go through here. You guys probably know this by heart. It's number 54. Number 54. You can also type in the type over here, but we want a double OG top. Double OG top. All right, and once you choose your type, you go ahead and click on Continue, and then you have to set how much you want how much curvature you want on the top. So I can go ahead and look down here, and it says that my height is 36, so I want this to be slightly higher than 36, so I would make it to be like 36.5 perhaps, maybe a little bit more.
37. Not 38.
Inch and a half.
Oh, an inch and a half, so I'll do 37.5. 37.5. And then go ahead. And the nice thing that we have that we added in Omega 6.0 and it's in 6.5 as well is something called Apply. So even though I'm in my distortion dialog box, I can click on Apply, and you notice that I'm still here in my distortion dialog box. So if I want to go ahead and do some experimentation, if I want to try 38 or something like that, just as an example, you can go ahead and click on Apply, and it's nice because you sort of get the contextual effect without jumping in and out of the dialog box, 4 times, 10 times, however many times you're trying the different effect. So I'll go back to 37.5 because I have an inch and a half above my original 36. Click on Apply, and then OK, and there we have it. Okay?
Dana, can you do it the other way? Can you subtract it from the height? Because normally your dimensions are even inches, and we're starting with the 24 by 36 and then adding the top.
Okay. Well, then let's do it the way that we should do it then. So you're saying it should be 24 high and 36 wide?
No. Your 24 is fine. Your 36 is fine. But when you put that SERP top on, you want to take it from the 36 high.
I see. So I want it to be 34.5 for my height.
Yeah.
So,
right. Yeah.
all right. So I'm going to go into my border, and this is the nice thing about the border. I can go ahead and type in that value of 34.5, and also, by the way, I'll change my length to be 24, and I'll go OK. And you notice that because of reaction, it changed my border because I have the parameters of the border, and now I can also double-click on here and go into distortion, and I can change this to be 36. So it's nice because reaction kind of keeps everything together. And I can go ahead and click on Apply. So now I have my even number of 36, and I have my border size of 34.5. So again, it's nice because it's sort of like, it allows you to make changes and do what-if scenarios and do slight modifications without having to go back and basically start from the beginning. Okay, is that good?
Nice.
All right, good. And again, if I want to change my length of my border, because I use border as opposed to just plain old rectangle, I can go ahead and change my length to be, let's say 30, and just as an example, and go ahead and click on OK, and it still maintained my height, and it still maintained my distortion. So it's just making it easy for me to create different scenarios and different types of different stones without, without having to start all over and replay all the steps over and over again. Okay? So that's why I like border. He's my friend. Border my friend. All right. So next up, we have we want to deal with some text. So in terms of text, I have some of the Monument fonts here, and I don't know if the Monument fonts that we have are the Monument fonts that you have. I understand that they're not necessarily the same. Perhaps our fonts are could use some updating. You might have a source that's something more updated or what have you. So I also want to make sure I touch on the TrueType font converter, and hopefully you guys are already familiar with that. But I'm using Monument Modified Roman Bold. Is that okay so far? All right.
Sounds good.
So I go ahead and I'm going to make sure I'm out of, there we go. Go to my text on the work surface. Okay, and Murphy is with me again, so let me choose a different font.
If it's not letting you type, it might have to be in all caps for you to type.
Yeah, maybe I have caps lock on, so. Yeah, I have caps lock on. Thank you. Shift T, J, O, H, N, D, O, E. All right. So here's just some basic text, and I'll bring this over here onto my my marker. And then just to sort of touch on some of the capabilities. So first of all, I want to make sure that this is centered. So everyone hopefully is familiar with the Justify tool. And with the Justify tool, I want this to be centered across the middle. And when you do Justify, you select the item that's going to move first and the item that you want to move to second. So I select my John Doe first, and then my marker stone second, and I go into Arrange and then Justify. And again, if you're into keyboard shortcuts, Shift F9 is the accelerator key for that. So if you want it to be left justified, you can do that, et cetera, et cetera. So Shift F9. And if you want it to be, you can do more than one at a time. So you can do number 2, and you can also do number 3, 4, 5 here at the same time. And it's going to center the text right in the middle of the alignment template.
So you select the name first, and then.
Yeah. So the thing that you want to move is what you select first. So I select John Doe first, and then you select the outside of the stone second. And then Arrange and Justify. And again, I want it to be centered. So I want the text to be centered, or I'll do Right Justify, just it shows it a little better. I do Right Justify and bottom at the same time. And so John Doe is going to move down here to the bottom right because I selected the stone second. And that works for groups, basically. So Anything that's grouped together is your first selection, and anything that's grouped together is your second selection that things are going to move to. Okay? All right, so next up we have various text treatments that we can deal with, and we can deal with those by using our outline capability. So we have original text, hide original, and so we can do a polished edge and a frosted inlay as well. So, and again, help me with my terminology, but I'll just show you some of the various things that you can do with text. So first I'm going to select my text, and to get to the outline capability, that's under the Tools menu, and then you have Outline. And again, if you're into keyboard shortcuts, Alt-1. And one of the other things that we've also added now in Omega 6.5, I'm going to use this Apply capability again, just to sort of show you there. But the nice thing is that we also have the ability now, while I'm in this dialog box, even though the outline dialog box is open, I'm using my mouse scroll wheel. And I can scroll up and down by using my mouse scroll wheel, so I can get a better perspective. Also, by using my mouse scroll wheel, I can hold down the Control key and I can zoom out, so I can see more of my image. Even though I'm in the outline dialog box, you can use your mouse scroll wheel interactively while you're in the dialog box to...
That's only on 5?
That's in Omega 6.5. So the Apply button we added in Omega 6, and then we realized, well, man, it's nice to be able to scroll around a little bit so you can get a better idea of the context of the design. So in 6.5, we added the mouse scrolling capability. So the other thing you can do also while you're in the dialog box is F8 to show filled. But I have white on white so you don't see anything. And also, if you want to scroll left and right, you hold down the Shift key, and that allows you to scroll left and right with your mouse wheel, Shift and left, right. And then just up, down is just the mouse wheel. And then I guess that's about, and if you want to zoom in and zoom out, that's Control and mouse wheel. And it zooms in and out on the position of your mouse cursor. So if I zoom in here, then I move my mouse down here, and you watch, it's going to, oh, so yeah, maybe, there we go. It generally follows your mouse in terms of the zooming in and zooming out. But so I try to keep usually my mouse on the graphic and then zoom in and out from there. So, all right, so back to Outline meanwhile. So if I want to try to make this a little bit of a bolder font, I can go ahead and I can set this to be, I'll say a 0.05. And then you have some capabilities down here such as hide originals. And then and what hide original is going to do is basically was sort of shown a preview down here. My original selected text is going to go away, and it's only going to show me my bolder result. That's 0.05 inches bolder. Or I'll do a 0.07 and then apply it. And you can see that it's getting a little bit bolder every time that I click on Apply and change the value. If you want to try to lighten something up, you can do a minus 0.02 or a minus 0.03 and click on Apply again, and now you have a lighter version. So that's just using the outline dialog box. If I go ahead and do a 0 and apply it, I'm back to my, it says, couldn't figure out what happened there. So I can go ahead and undo that or turn my outline off to get back to it. And then we have these other effects such as the polished edge. And for polished edge, it says you do an inline and an outline and you hide the originals. And then if you want to do inlaid, you keep your originals and add an outline. So those are all in that same dialog box, and you can do it all at the same time. So I select it, I go into Tools and then Outline. And I'm sorry if this is very basic. If you want me to move on faster, then say, all right, yeah, we all know this, so move on. This is too basic. Feel free. That's the beauty of a webinar. All right, so if I want to do, I can do a negative, a minus 0.02, and then I can also do a positive. So I can do a positive 0.05, go ahead and apply it. And then again, if you want to do your hide originals, go ahead and apply it. And then so you have both of those passes accomplished in that dialog box at the same time. Okay? Any questions about that? Pretty basic stuff? No problem?
No problem.
Okay.
And the man that has to cut the death date will hate you when you outline your letters.
When they have to actually go cut the stencil. Okay, I understand. So what do you do? Just don't use an outline like that? Is that what you're saying? Because it's just too difficult to cut out of the stencil?
I do, but I'm lucky because the man that does all the cutting death date works for me. So I usually either give him the value or just go ahead and create the date for him and send it to him. He has his own plotter.
Okay, I see.
But it does cause problems if someone that's not familiar with that. I mean, it's really hard to match the date, but it can be done. It's just difficult.
Yes. And hopefully with the apply button, you can try different scenarios more quickly than ever to try to get the the similar effect or something like that. Okay. If I can, I'm going to go ahead and go into my text here again. One of the things that I want to make sure that I cover is just some basic text capabilities as well. So here's John again, and in a lot of cases you're trying to match particular spacing or what have you, and I'm just gonna cover it. And again, if it's too basic, I apologize. But whether you're in text on the work surface or if you're in text in the dialog box. And by the way, do you guys have a preference? Do you use text on the work surface more, or do you use text in the dialog box more? So do you do it here on the screen, or do you go into the dialog box?
I do it on the work surface myself.
You do it on the work surface, okay? And I can show it both ways. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
How do you control the character spacing?
That's exactly what I'm going to show right now. So if I'm in text on the work surface, so I just typed in John Doe, and this is just plain text, we have this button right here, which is character spacing. So this button here allows you to graphically adjust the spacing between all of the letters on a line of text. So you can see that I'm spacing it way out. And then also in the dialog box itself, if we actually go in, you can see that there's a spacing value if you want. So in the dialog box, what I'm basically changing is this character spacing percent. So I'm going to do a wacky number. I'm going to do 400% and go ahead and click on Composer. But I'm adjusting it graphically by using text on the work surface and clicking in here.
Is there any way to see that character spacing value from the work surface?
From the work surface, I don't believe that there is, no. But you can do it graphically and then go into the text dialog box, and you can see the value there, just like I showed you. So I'll go ahead and I'll change it, and I'll make it some random value. And then if you just escape out and double-click on it with the pointer, you can go in here and see that it's 163%. So that's one. That's the way that you can space out your entire line of text. And again, I've seen people do, like I watch with horror as I watch what some people do sometimes to manipulate text kerning. So what some people will do is that they'll take a line of text, they'll basically make a copy of it, they'll go into Edit, and they'll convert it to objects. And then, so you no longer have text, you now have just a series of individual objects, and you can't even change the font or anything. And then they'll select an individual letter, and they'll move it graphically like this. And if they want to change the font or change the words or something, that they'll go back and enter text in again. You don't have to do this. There's a much better way. And the much better way is, again, for text on the work surface, I'll show it, and I'll also show it in the dialog box. But you just go to your text on the work surface icon, you insert it between any two letters, and then you have on the keyboard, you have the less than sign and the greater than sign. If you want to change the kerning between any two character pairs, like for example, maybe between the O and the H, I want to tighten that up a little bit, you just put the cursor between those two characters and do the less than sign. Less than, less than, less than, and maybe between the H and the N, less than, less than, less than. And again, I'll type in a wacky value over here between the D and the O. I'm going to do greater than 15, 16, 17 times, whatever it is. So the nice thing is that I still have text. I can highlight this and change my font. I can change the size, whatever it is. But I still maintain my kerning. So, and if you want to see what that actual kerning is, again, if you double click on it and go into your text entry dialog box, you can see the less than signs and the greater than signs that I entered in text on the work surface. And by the way, you can also delete them in here. So if you want to just kind of get back to your fresh original text, you can go ahead and delete it. And you can add them in this dialog box as well by using the same characters. So I'll do F11 as my regular text with my extra 163% spacing. And you can do plus, less than and greater than in here. So I'm going to go ahead and make John and Doe to be very close. So I'm doing I'm sorry, wrong way. I'll do less than, less than, less than. whole bunch of times. And now you see, just doing it to the extreme, and if you double-click again, you can see it right here in the text entry dialog box. And again, using text on the work surface, just get it between those two. It's hard because they are next on top of each other. But you can go ahead and just less than and greater than for kerning. Okay? And again, I hope you know that, but I've talked to way too many people who are not familiar with it, so I wanted to make sure I touched on it. Okay. All right, back to text again. I said, for making the stone shapes, I talked about how I prefer the border tool because I can change it parametrically. Another thing that I can do if I want to create sort of a border around something and have it automatically adapt to the size of the text is that we have a function under the Tools menu called Surround. And it's all the way toward the bottom, like 4 or 5 up from the bottom. It's called Surround, Extract Image Paths. We kind of bundled two things together, but because I just have vector selected, it's showing me Surround. And I click on OK. And it asks you, what do you want your margin to be around this text? I'll say I want it to be 1/4 inch, 0.25. And I don't have any stroke widths. And you can also tell it to surround by groups if you want to. So I'll turn that on because my text is a group. And I go ahead, and now you see that I have my John Doe text with a 1/4 inch border that was automatically adapted to the size of that. So the nice thing is now if I go into my text dialog box and I change my letter height to be 4 inches, watch what's going to happen also to my border. It also adapted my border to automatically adapt to the size of my text. So that's again, just another nice feature as you're laying out different names or different dates and what have you, or even different fonts. You can have this background automatically generate with a preset value. So if you want it to be a little bigger, maybe 0.5, go ahead and then you're all set. So that's the Surround tool. And again, to get to it, you select whatever it is that you want to surround. You go into the Tools menu and you have Surround, Extract Image Paths, and then you go ahead and just type in the value for the distance between your original text and the surrounded border. Okay?
The width and the height value have to be the same?
No, yes, it does. That's correct. Sorry.
That's a new one on me. I've never found that.
Yep, good. Well, hopefully that's why you go to a webinar, so you learn something new, even if the guy flubbed in the beginning and couldn't log on, right? And again, just sort of using this guy here, another thing that we've added recently, so you notice that if I look at my text, I select it and my text is a group, and then also when I select this outside border, that's its own group as well. So what I can do now in Omega 6.5 is that I can select that whole thing and go into, right-click on it, and we now have groups of groups. So I can go ahead and make this a group. And when I ungroup it, it's not going to ungroup it all into individual components. It'll ungroup it into the previous subgroups. So anyway, if I want to go ahead and align this, I select John Doe first as a group, and then I select my outside stone and do a Shift F9 because I like my accelerator keys. OK, and now it's perfectly centered. Okay. By the way, another thing that I like a lot in terms of just a basic on-screen manipulation is I select something and I do Shift-Z. Shift-Z is Zoom to Selected. And so I use that constantly. It allows me to kind of zoom around and navigate very quickly just by selecting something and doing Shift-Z. Okay, good. All right, so there's my John Doe. There's my surround. And as I said, we're over here getting to this sort of an effect over here. So, all right. So with that being said, I think because a lot of people probably want to learn about that, let me see, importing images, spacing to a value, vector clip art. What I'll do, I'll go ahead and I'll build that proposal, that presentation, and then I'll go and backtrack. And again, I am recording this, so if people do have to leave at 11 o'clock, I completely understand. And because you're registered, I'll send out the recording to everybody who's been online here. So it'll just go to you automatically. But so again, what I'll do is build the presentation and show the clipping paths, and then I'll go ahead and try to catch some of these other topics after the fact. Okay? Sound good? Sound like a plan?
Sounds good.
Okay, good. So I have my basic design over here, and let's say that I want to do one type of granite for the base and another type of granite for the actual stone itself, and maybe even I want to do a slightly lighter color here for the John Doe. So I'll show you how to do that using clipping paths and a feature that we also added at Omega 6, which even makes it easier. So, all right. So if I have this guy here, I'm sure you guys all have your favorite source for finding your various granite textures. So for my base, let's say I want to use this guy here, which is sort of a texture of granite. So in Omega, just kind of using the basic Omega functions, what I can do is sort of scale this so it's going to cover my stone. And then what I have to do for using clipping paths, and that's what I'm going to use. I'm going to use clipping paths a bunch of times here just to sort of get this covered. And I'll show different ways of using it as well. So what I need to do is make sure that my image is in back of my vector. And by the way, another feature that I use, the image is sort of obscuring what I'm trying to see. If you press F9 while you're viewing images in wireframe mode, F9 toggles you between showing an image, or showing an image wireframe. So this is if you're viewing vectors, press F9 and it'll allow you to toggle your images to be wireframe or filled while you're still in wireframe mode for everything else. So what you need to do, you need to make sure that your image is to back. So you can select your image and you can go to front to back and tell it to go to back. And so therefore, now my vectors are to front. And then to get this into a clipping path, it's actually very simple. You select your vector, you select your image that's in back of your vector, and you go to the Shape menu, and then you have Make Clipping Path. And again, notice that I am in Omega CS, which is Cut Solution, which is, if you're just cutting objects and things like that, it doesn't have all the edge fills and things like that. But in Omega CS, you can make a clipping path. So I go ahead and make Clipping Path. And then I'm going to do my F9 again, and in Omega 6.5 and later, even though I'm in my wireframe for my vectors, you notice that it is actually clipping my objects. So that's a new feature as well. But if you want to actually see it in filled mode, you can go to the View menu and Show Filled. View and Filled. And F8 is the toggle for that. This guy disappeared because it's just white so far, white on white. So what I might actually do, right, I might make it all black or something like that, but we'll just proceed.
So,
right,
Danny, that granite fill that you had there, is that a fill that's on one of the colors, or is it something you just import? Did you copy and paste on the screen?
Everything I used here, I did a Google search, and it's probably worth taking a check out of Google as well because, okay, so you see Google, I'll go here, and I'll do granite texture. And you can see I already searched granite texture because it came up. And then when you do a Google image search, if you click on images, they actually have the ability, and you can sort of did this for me automatically. So, what are the colors that you want? Do you want jet black only, and then it only shows you jet black? Or you can get rid of that filter, et cetera, et cetera. Some of the other things, though, that are nice in terms of images, if you go into, it's actually Tools, you look over here for usage rights. So if for usage rights, you can do labels for non-commercial reuse with modification, just plain old labels for reuse.
No. Are you sure? Because I can get off.
No,
All right. So anyway, I'm looking at granite textures, and you can also do it by size if you want to. So if you only want large size granite textures, you can do that as well. So I just kind of went through and I found something that was pleasant. So here's publicdomainpictures.net. Public domain means that it's free for you to use in any way, shape, or form that you want. But of course, you always want to check the license as it's shown on the website. But so here's publicdomainimages.com. Of course, I'm sure you guys all have granite textures that you can that you may have purchased or you may have created yourselves or what have you. But now I'm going to go ahead and I can save my image as. This is an important distinction. The way that I prefer to work, I prefer to save my images and then import them into Composer. So this is polishedgranitexture.jpg. I have to remember that name. And then when I come here into Composer, I can go F10 or File and then Import. File, Import. And you see my keyboard accelerator is F10. And here's my polishedgranitexture.jpg. The reason that I like to import as opposed to copy and paste is it has to do with file size, and also I just find that it's just a little more assured for me. When you copy and paste, Composer uses just a standard BMP format that can be very large in terms of your file size. So if I'm going to tile this together, I'm going to have a whole bunch of images. I might have a very large file size. If I import a JPEG file, however, it's going to maintain my original JPEG file size as opposed to my larger bitmap file size. So I just like to save and then import. I just think it's a little bit safer and it's a little bit easier and better. Okay?
Okay.
So I don't have a library of Granite textures. I didn't create these Granite textures.
But you could put a file folder on your desktop and just save them all in there and then just import them when you need them. Perfect.
You got it. That's exactly correct. So so for the first one, what I did, I scaled the Granite, and then I went ahead and I just did a clipping path. What I want to do next is show you a feature that we added in Omega 6.0, which is even better. So let's say that I want to actually, instead of scaling the Granite, I want to tile this together in sort of a seamless texture kind of a pattern. And by the way, if you go back here to Google and you turn this off, I think that's one of the filters, is that they have like seamless as one of the filters that you can get up here. I thought I saw that before, but anyway, or you can also type it into your Google search. But so here's my pattern, and I'm going to show we added a new feature. It's called Bitmap Fill. So the first thing and what it's going to do is going to do a whole bunch of operations for me automatically, and I'll show you what it does. So for Bitmap Fill, the first thing you need to do is select your image that you want to use as your pattern fill or your bitmap fill. Then you go to the image menu. Oh, maybe not. Never mind. I take that back. So I'm going to show you the manual way of doing the same thing. So in Omega CS, my image menu is not available. So I just learned something here myself as well, like I said. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to repeat this guy, and then I'm going to use my clipping path again. So here's my original image. I go into my Tools menu, and then you have Repeats Merge. And you can go ahead and set your gap. Click on Gap. And I want my gap to be 0 and 0. And then you can set up your X repeats and your Y repeats. So I'm just going to start off by doing 10 and 10, and I'll click on Apply again. So that gives me an idea. And you can see that that is not a seamless texture because it's showing me a little bit of the, at the join, it's not so subtle. But you can find a seamless texture as well.
Dana, can I just grab it by the corner and just make it that big?
You can also do that if you just want to do it with this individual piece. You can do that as well. Absolutely. I was just trying to show it so as things were seamed together. But you can do this and just scale it up, and you're probably right. That's a lot easier if you want to. But you see it's a little bit distorted. So what I was trying to do was find a seamless texture and just get something nice and consistent. But that's okay. It's for a customer proof. So I'll show how to do the clipping path once again. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to right-click and to front to back. I'm going to tell it to go to back again because your image has to be in back. I'm going to press F9 so I can see my vectors and go ahead and select this vector and then select my image. And it doesn't have to be selected first or second. It's just that the image has to be in back of the vectors. Go to the Shape menu and then make clipping path again. Include the template image object. I don't want a template. So it's just barking at me and it's telling me that I need to change the type of image that it is from a template. So I select him. Again, the image has to be to back. Go to Shape, make clipping path. And now when I press F8, I now have my texture there in the background once again. All right? And then finally go ahead.
One quick question. Can you use a camera and take a picture of actual granite and save it as a JPEG and do the same thing?
You sure can. You can, however you get your JPEG file in, you can take a digital picture. You can find it on Google. You can buy a clip art package, and it doesn't have to be a JPEG. It can be a TIFF, or it can be a BMP, or it can be any of the file formats that we support. So, yeah, you can absolutely do that. So you can build your own library of various textures. Absolutely.
Of everything you have in stock. Nice.
Yep. So here we have John Doe, and John Doe. I want to show a subtlety for John Doe as well. So what I'm going to do is, if I have this lighter guy here, actually I have this darker one. I'm going to use this darker one for John Doe. And again, it might be a goofy example that I'm just trying to sort of illustrate something. So you guys are saying, man, this guy is doing some goofy stuff. But hopefully it's illustrating the point of creating the clipping paths. So I'll scale that guy down. You can also crop in Omega. Right now I'm sort of distorting and distending this. So I press my F9 so I can see my image. and Shift Z to zoom to everything. And so if I go ahead and I scale this guy, you know, everything is sort of compressed here in terms of my texture. But the other thing that you can do, I'll move this on top of the John Doe. It's scaled to be big enough. If I like that texture and I don't want to squish the texture, we also have the ability to go ahead, I think we do, maybe not. Oh, see, I don't. See, I learned something new again. So I'm just going to leave it at that size is what I'm going to do instead of actually squishing it. And I'm going to have a little bit of overhang, but because I like the texture, I'm going to leave it that way. So again, I'm going to select my image, make sure it's to back, front to back, make sure my image is to back. And then I select my vectors on top of it, F9, so it makes it easier for me to select my vectors. And then I'm going to go ahead, and I have them both selected. I go to the Shape menu and make clipping path again. Tell me
CS didn't have bitmap editing tool.
Yep. So what I'm doing, I'm just selecting this image, and I'm going over here to this the fill bucket, the fill dialog box, or you can also just select it and press number 1 on the keyboard, and that brings you into this image fill dialog box. Even though you're an Omega CS, I can still change it from being a template to being a spot color. And for the purposes of a clipping path, it has to be either spot or process. Actually, I'm going to undo that. I'm going to make it a process color. I apologize. Process, because it's going to maintain my colors more naturally. All right, so now when I select my image, which is to back, and I select my vectors, I go into Shape and I make clipping path again, and I press F8, and you now notice that this whole piece is behaving as a clipping path, and this is behaving as an entire, as one clipping path unit. My vectors are behaving as one clipping path unit because I have them all grouped together. So let me sort of illustrate that. I'm going to select this guy, and I'm going to undo. And I'm going to show you what happens if these are not all grouped together. So just for the sake of the exercise, maybe I'm going to convert these to objects. So I go to Edit and Convert to Objects. And now I'm also going to select this, and I'm going to ungroup, F5, or right-click and ungroup. So now I have this whole piece is just a series of individual objects. Convert to Objects. So I can go ahead and ungroup it. So if I have these as a series of individual objects, and I try to make a clipping path, what it's going to do, it's actually just going to make a clipping path with my first selected object. And that's not exactly what I want. I want it to clip all of them. So I make clipping path, I do an F8, and you notice that it's only doing that one guy over there on the right. So if I want the entire line of John Doe text to behave as one clipping path, I first have to select it, and I have to go to Shape and release the clipping path because I did it once before. I have to select all this text in the outline border, and then just simply right-click on it and group it, or press F6, or however you prefer to do your grouping. Group, and then group. And now when I select this guy as my individual group, my entire group, and then my outside object, I go to the Shape menu and make clipping path, and press F8, and now you notice that the whole thing is behaving as a clipping path instead of just that first selected object. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah. To change the text to black, you would just grab the black from your below and drag it up.
I'm sorry, say that again?
To change the text to black.
Oh. Instead of being clear or what have you?
No, just the text.
Yeah, just change the text to black.
I see, okay. So I guess I was a little overzealous in that case. So let me move him off. And because I made this all one group, the whole thing is behaving as a clipping path. So I'm going to select it, go to Shape, and then release my clipping path. I'll do F8. And so now I'm going to just select my text. Oops, sorry. I'll select my text. And yes, I will go down here and I'll use black as my vinyl color. And so now I have black text. And now what I can also do is select this outside border and select my image in the background, and then I can go to Shape and make clipping path. So I have my border filled with the granite, and then I have the black text on top of that. Is that what you were trying to?
Yes.
That's good?
But to do that, you have to get the text the right color first.
Well, really more importantly is what you choose as your clipping path. So before I had the text and that outside border as my clipping path. So what I did, I went backwards, and I'll do a completely fresh example. And so the answer is no, you don't have to change the color of the text first. So I have this image over here, so I'm doing a new example here. So this is a different granite texture. I'm going to just go ahead and type in some text. Thursday. So there's my text. And then I'll also make my border. So I'll do Control B just to make a border. I'm sorry, B for border. And I'll go ahead and make this border here. All right. So for the clipping path, for the mask, I'm going to go ahead and select this border. And I can see that it's already in front of my image. And then I'll select the image in the background. So I have them both selected. And I go to the Shape menu and make clipping path. And let me put it in show filled mode. So I'll go to the Shape menu and make clipping path, and now I have that texture inside of the border. And now the text is really just another object that I can place on top of it. And it's really, the black text is completely independent of what I just did for the clipping path. So I just moved the black text on top of it. So really the clipping path unit is the image and my border, and then my text is just black text on top of that. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. So there's Thursday, or the same thing over here. I have John Doe. Oops. You want to make sure, again, you can, that outside of the border is getting me a little bit. So I can select this whole thing as well, and with my groups I can go press F6 and group it, or right-click and go ahead and group this guy. And then it'll all behave as a single unit. I'll just move that over there. And because, you see that there's sort of a lot of extra stuff hanging off for my image, you can crop that in another program. We typically can crop if you have the layout station, or if you have Omega CS, you can crop in Composer. But with Omega CP, you can crop in Composer. But here in Omega CS, you cannot do image cropping. But we're still accomplishing it without without too much additional work, hopefully. All right. So far so good.
Yeah. Excellent.
Good. Excellent. So there's our stone, and then you kind of repeat the process if you want to add additional areas with different vectors. And I'm just going to do it real quick. So in this time, I'm going to do it a little differently. So I'm going to type in some new text again. I'll type in Gerber. And this time what I'm going to do, I don't know if it's going to allow me to do that. I don't think it is. I'm going to put my Gerber into a different granite texture. So I have this guy over here. I'll drag it over. And again, I just grabbed this off of Google, and this time I will sort of distend it. So I have my text in front. I have my little image in back. I select them both. And once you get the hang of it, you go to the Shape menu, make clipping path. Boom. So now I have Gerber over here. And it's going to probably be a little bit hard to see. One of the things, but you can see it there, one of the things that I do want to point out, if you want to give this an outline or something like that, an important thing to note about a clipping path is that because it's a window. A clipping path is a window. A window is clear. It has no color. So if you had black text before, as soon as you make it a clipping path, it no longer is black because you're using the text as a window to whatever is behind it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you want to actually add an outline to this, what you need to do, you can actually select the clipping. I'm holding down the Control key and just selecting the text. I can now go into my outline dialog box, so go to Tools and then Outline, and I can add an additional outline to this. And now the outline is not a part of my clipping path. So what I can, actually it is. So it's probably better. Let me back up. So I'm going to release my clipping path.
Now if you did that and separated the outline, does it stay as part of the clipping path?
I'm going to just back up. I'm going to release my clipping path and show it. So turn my outline off. All right. So what I would do is, here's your plain old text, which is my black text. I would outline it first. So select it and then go into Outline and then apply the 0.1-inch outline. But what I want to do is move this as a whole unit. So I'm going to move this up here on top of my image. So I have Gerber on top of my image. And now when you do outline in Composer, each pass is its own group. So it makes it very easy to select your original guy, and it's already grouped for me, and then select the image. So I just have the inset pass, or the original pass, and the image selected. I go to Shape and make clipping path. And let me make sure that it's all the front. Let me undo that again. So I'm going to select this original guy, make sure that it's grouped, F6 to group it. And then I also want to make sure that it's all to front. I'm going to select it and right-click and go to front. Make sure it's all the way in front. The image is in front, or the text is in front, or the image is in back. So now I can select this original path, select my image, go to the Shape menu, and make clipping path. And you don't see it because my black outline is in front of it. So let me move the black outline off, just for viewing purposes.
Can't you just go back to the back?
So now, yep, you could also, yeah, but I'm just showing it. So,
okay.
So I'm showing that here you have your clipping path or your mask. And if you want to actually show it, what you can do is just select this and send it to back. Select your outline. And send it to back, shift page down if you're into the shortcut keys, or send it to back. So now you have your Gerber with your granite, and you have that with your black outline. Again, when you do a clipping path, you no longer have a color in your vector, in your text objects. And I'm going to bring that to front and just do a little bit of arranging here. So I have to make sure I select it and bring it to front, shift page up I'm doing, and then I have my black background. Shift page up.
Does the clipping path stuff work in Omega 5, or do you have to have 6?
Yes, it does work in Omega 5. Yep.
Because when I tried on my end, it says that the selection includes a template image object. I'm not sure what that
yes.
is.
Yep, I was getting that same message. And if you do get that message, what you want to do is select your image and press number 1 on the keyboard, or click on this little fill bucket over here. I'm sorry, I got the wrong guy. Hang on. Select your image.
Okay.
F8, F9. So select your image, and then go into your fill bucket and turn it into process instead of template. I already did it before, but it's set up in Omega CS. Images come in as templates by default, but you can change it to be process by going into this little fill bucket over here. Select the image and turn it into process. Okay? Easy enough?
Yep.
Okay, good. All right, so here I am back over here, and this is, and I have my black that I'm trying to bring to front. Save, shift page up. 8. Grr. Shift page up. All right. So you're saying that sometimes you deal with the front to back issues as well? All right. Well, what I'm going to try to punt here. I'm going to make it a different color. See if I get that. Vinyl green. Or maybe I'm going to make it all the same vinyl color. That's what I'll do. Okay. So with my to fronting and my to backing, I'm going to select this entire piece, and I think I have two different vinyl colors here. So if I click on it, it says my vinyl color is white. So my image has a vinyl color of white. My text has a vinyl color of black, and my outline has a vinyl color of black. So I'm going to hopefully easily consolidate those by selecting all of them and making sure they all have the same vinyl color, and I'm going to make them all to be black. And again, I'm not so concerned about the color of my clipping path because it's not black. It's really just a window. So I'm just sort of, to make my front to back easier, if you make all of your colors to be your vinyl colors to be the same, it can help you in some of these to front to back situations. So yeah, to front to back is like its whole webinar by itself, but that would be really boring. So I'd probably lose you very quickly. Okay, so there's John Doe. There's my stone. There's my monument. And then, so in terms of the flowers, I have another flower example over here. So this is, again, just some clip art that I got from a website. And you can see that there's even a watermark on it still. So can you see the camera watermark in the background? What I'm going to do for this guy is select my bouquet image, go to my Tools menu, and then we have Raster to Vector or Generate Decal Cut. I'm going to use Generate Decal Cut. And what this is going to do is basically just kind of give me a vector outline around the flowers that I can then use as a clipping path. So I selected my flowers. There are no vectors in it all right now. And then I go to Tools, Generate Decal Cut. And one of the nice things about Generate Decal Cut in Omega, I guess 5.0, 6.0, and 6.5, is that there's now this nice slider here. And in Omega 6.0 and 6.5, I want you to make sure that you turn this checkbox on. Always use preset resample value, and my favorite preset resample value is good smoother. And once you turn those two things on, you don't have to turn them on anymore. But you notice that you can also change your slider. So you see over here, as I look at this over here on the right-hand side, this is kind of the image that's going to be fed into my vectorization engine. And you see that there's some extra noise in here on the inside. I don't want those pieces. All I really want is just this outside contour of my bouquet. So what you can do to make sure you don't get any of those inside pieces is set your spec size down here at the bottom to be very large. And what it's going to do is filter out any of these little pieces of white objects that are basically too small. I don't want them, so I'm just going to go ahead and try to filter them out with my spec size. With my slider, you notice that I can also filter out that watermark in the background. So I'm just going to try to sort of slide it until the watermark pretty much disappears for the most part. But I still have a pretty decent footprint here, and I have my pixel size threshold to be set pretty high. So there it is. And I got rid of some of the paper in the background as well. So I'll do my F9, and I got a pretty nice footprint of my vector there. Let me do F9. And so now I can see my image, and I can even press D. If I press D, it's going to, well, never mind. I just press F9, toggle it on and off, and I can see that I have a pretty nice footprint for my bouquet there. And then what I can do is hold down my Shift key. Hold down my Control key, and when I did my vectorization, this is all grouped as one group. But if I hold down my Control key, I can go ahead and break my group temporarily to delete any of this stuff on the inside that actually came through because it's bigger than my spec size threshold of 50 pixels. So there I have my bouquet, and there I have my black vector. I'm just going to select them again, make sure that my vector is to front, which it is because I can see it. But just to make sure, I'll select it, and I'll go Shift Page Up, make sure it's to front. Select my image in the background, go to the Shape menu, Make Clipping Path. Oh, see, I got this message. That's the same message you got, right?
Yeah, but I actually don't have the fill option. Is that because I'm in layout station, or is that just something else?
What version are you running? Are you in 5.0?
I'm in 5.0 layout station.
All right. Oh, a 5.0 layout station. Yeah, you absolutely. If you select an image, you should be able to just select it and go ahead and press 1 on the keyboard, and it should bring you into an image fill dialog box if you only have an image selected. The layout station is it has full Omega CP capabilities, so you should be able to do that. Are you doing it right now yourself?
Yeah, it's just not doing anything.
Huh. All right. Well, maybe we can take it offline, and we'll try to figure it out. Okay. We'll get it figured out. It's also, if you have a layout station, yeah, you should absolutely be able to do that. But we'll make sure you send me an email because I'm going to send a follow-up email, and you can contact me that way. So I select my vector, select my image in the background, Shape, Make Clipping Path, boom, and there's my nice bouquet without any of the extraneous noise. And in terms of the vase or whatever it is, pardon me, I'm going to draw a vase very quickly. You're not going to like it, but it'll get the job done. So I'll do Shift L. Shift L, by the way, is a pencil tool that we have in detail edit capabilities. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a pencil, make a vase. Oh boy. I'm good, aren't I? And then I'll just make my base of my vase, Control B. There we go. And I'm going to scale up my flowers to fit on my vase. And the other thing that I want to show as well, so I have these two components that I want. I'm going to do Shift F9 for Align Center, or I'm going to go to the Arrange menu and Align. Justify, sorry. And then because I have these two different pieces and I have this overlap here, I don't necessarily want that overlap. Of course, you can go into the Tools menu, and then we have Effects. And for Effects, we then have Contour. And Contour, and I want to show more of Contour as well. That is going to automatically get rid of any of those extra overlaps. And then I can scale this to be whatever size I'd like it to be. And if I wanted to, I could also use my vase down below. I could go ahead and add a granite fill to that as well, such as what you see over here, because I did add a granite fill to that one. So you have your vase with the granite fill, and then the flower bouquets on top. And again, to do that, to do the granite fill, you just use a clipping path, such as what we were showing before. Okay. Hopefully that's
cool. And background?
Yes.
And for the background of the grass?
Yeah.
Okay, so for the background of the grass, again, shame on me, but I went to Google and I did cemetery. Oh, did I spell that wrong? Sorry. Cemetery scene. But Google will correct me anyway if I'm not a good speller. So you just need to find the scene. And again, the question before about can I just go ahead and take a picture of something, you can absolutely take a picture of the real setting where this is going to go, and then you can import that in as a JPEG and go ahead and use that instead of finding something kind of stock off the internet. So I'm just sort of showing a quick example here. So I like that one that I have in there already. But this, I found the one that's in my Composer example by doing something very similar. I just went to Google and searched for it. So if it's okay, I'm just going to kind of recycle this piece. Is that okay?
That's fine.
All right, good. And then it's just a matter of really scaling and things like that. And again, I just need to make sure that he's to back. So I'm going to select my scene, right-click, front to back, and send it to back. And of course, you want him in the foreground. And this is important. Again, we have our groups of groups. So what I can do is select this and turn him off. So that's going to be one group just to make it easier for me. And then this is going to be another group. Select it. And I'm just going and pressing F6 on my keyboard or going to Arrange and Grouping. Group. So now it's just easier for me to go ahead and select that. So I press F8, and I can go ahead and scale these to my heart's content just to make it look appropriate for the size of the scene. Oops, there we go. So I got him settled right there. And for this one, again, it's nice because I grouped it, and I'll select my second guy as well, and that's all grouped. F9, so it's going to make it easier for me not to see this background, and I'll just sort of scale it down. And I'll do F9 again, and bring it over here, and then F8, and there you have your layout. And again, you might want to crop the background to show it as appropriate, but showing the different granite textures, showing the different effects, the lighter text, the darker text, my bouquet over on the side, etc. And then it's a matter of, okay, here I have it. What do I do with it? And you have a bunch of options here as well. Notice, be careful in Composer. Composer, of course, works at full size. So you notice down in my status bar, this is 83 inches by 127 inches. If I go to export this as a JPEG, even at a low resolution, I'm going to have the official term is a Mongo huge JPEG. So you don't necessarily want that for presentation purposes. So just for exporting, etc., you might want to go ahead and select it by the handle and bring it down to something a little more page size. So something more 8.5 by 11 or something like that. And the other thing that's important about exporting large files is that you want to maintain your ability, your ownership basically. This is a copyright of your business. You don't want somebody to necessarily go ahead and take it somewhere else. So it's not necessarily a good thing to have a super high resolution proof that somebody can then go and shop around or what have you. So I tend to encourage people to do JPEG, lower resolution if possible, but still get the point across, but not to allow somebody to compromise your design, right? So I made it a little smaller. I'm going to select this guy, and you can go to File and then Export. And when you go File, Export, you have the choice to do Selected. I just want to do Selected because I selected just my scene here with the stone. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to call this Dana 1. Dana 1, and for my file format, I want it to be JPEG. And I like JPEG because it compresses nicely, but it can maintain quality for you automatically. And when Omega exports a JPEG file, it is exported at the highest quality setting. So we don't actually offer the ability to slide your JPEG compression slider. So we just do it at best size. If you want to change that afterwards, you can do so in a third-party image editing program. So I'm going to say RGB color because it's full color. I'll leave my profile there. I usually keep these on, embed profile, and use pure white. I don't want any sandy background instead of having a nice pure white, so I always use pure white. Resolution here, again, you can see your pixel size, your image dimensions. This is okay, 1712 by 1119. If you want to, though, you can also type in a fixed size, and you can maintain the aspect ratio. So if you want to do something even smaller, but you notice that we only go down to 75 or 100. If you want something smaller, you can make it like real small. You can say you want it to be 400 pixels by 262 pixels. By clicking on these two checkboxes, fixed size and maintain aspect ratio, that's going to allow you to type in the value that you want and to also make it so it's not going to be squished. So now I'm going to just import that image right back in, dana1.jpg. I go ahead and import it in, and there's your scene. And it's, as I said, it's kind of low resolution. Actually, I went a little too low because you can't even make out the text. But you get the point. Is that again, you want to be able to maintain ownership, and if you want to export it at a higher resolution, of course you can. You can export an image up to 32,000 pixels out of Composer, so that's way more than you're going to need even for wide format printing in the vast majority of cases. So I'm going to go ahead and export it as a JPEG. This time I'll call it Dana 2. And Dana 2, instead of making it too small, I'll pop up the resolution to be a little bit more this time. So I have 2568 by 1679. Go ahead, export it, and I'm going to bring it right back in again, dana2.jpg. Boom. Here I am, and now you can start to see the detail better. So the reason you couldn't see the detail before, again, is just because I exported at too small a size. So that was me, just trying to prove a point. Okay? Lots of other things you can do here as well. So if you like the fact that a JPEG file is a picture and there are no live vectors in a JPEG file, but you also like the fact that Adobe Acrobat, everybody has Adobe Acrobat, there's another thing that you can do, which is, hang on, where's my thing, F8, F9. All right, there's my original image. So another thing that you can do, you can go to File, Export, and I'm going to do Select It again. I'm going to export as a JPEG file again. I'm exporting as JPEG. And this one I'm going to call for the name Dana 3. Dana 3. I go, OK, where's my mouse? Export. One of the options we have in here is that you can export it as a JPEG, like we're just showing, but you can also embed the JPEG in a PDF file. So you get the advantages of having a JPEG in that it's a picture, but you're embedding it in a PDF file, meaning that everybody has PDF readers, so they should be able to see it. So this is Dana 3. It's a JPEG at its heart, but it's actually a PDF file. So I'll jump over to Acrobat, and I'll go ahead and open this and go, oh, let me bring it onto my other monitor. There we go. So I go Control Open and C:\job C\monument features Dana3.pdf. And in Adobe Acrobat, you notice that you have your scene here, and everybody can look at it and see it. And there's actually a border around here because that's one of the settings in the JPEG export. So it actually created a JPEG, automatically embedded it in a PDF file that you can go ahead and share out. Just kind of taking this concept, all right, so there might be some text down here. This is the property of Bob's Memorials or whatever, you know, and you want to add some other disclaimer information. The other thing you can do, and again, beware of the size of your objects here, is that you can copy and paste from Composer into Word for Windows. So I scaled it down so it's 5 inches by 8 inches. I'll make it even a little smaller still. I'm just going to go to the Edit menu and copy. Then I'm going to flick over here to Word or PowerPoint or whatever it is, your tool of choice. I already have PowerPoint open, so I'm just going to use PowerPoint. I'll do a new slide. And this again could be Word for Windows. I'll do Word since everybody probably uses Word. So here comes Word. Wait for it. Wait for it. And again, if anybody has to go, this entire presentation will be recorded, and I will distribute it to everybody who's here. So, but here's plain old Word for Windows. Close this. Sure. I have a lot of. And I just went to Edit and Paste. And let's see how she looks. All right. So just doing the straight edit and paste, it didn't bring everything over. So we have some other options in Word I want to make sure you're aware of. If you go to paste, it depends on your version of Word. You have like Office 2007. You go to Edit and then Paste Special. So I'm going to go to, and in 2010, I'm going to paste Special as a bitmap. And when you paste Special as a bitmap, you notice that it does brings it all over. It is relatively low resolution. But if this were all vectors, if you just wanted to show just what your vectors are going to look like on just a wireframe stone, you could do that as well.
You copied that right out of Composer?
I copied out of Composer. I went Edit, Paste Special as a bitmap into Word for Windows, and here it is.
Sorry, I stepped over.
That's okay, no problem. And I'll try the other one, edit paste special again, and they're different versions of paste. And sometimes I'll mess around and I'll do different versions of paste special. So I did bitmap. Let me try picture enhanced meta file. See how that works. Sometimes one format works a little bit better than another. In this case, not so much because I didn't get anything. Edit paste special. Try it as a file. So that one. So yeah, in that case, I think the bitmap worked best. And again, you can also export as a JPEG or as a PDF out of Composer. And the other option, of course, is that if you have text in Word for Windows, you can also go the other way. You can say, this is the property of, and do not reproduce without express permission. I'm a good typist, aren't I? Yeah, there you go. And here in Word for Windows, I can also do Control-A and go to Edit and Copy, Alt-Edit and Copy, or Copy over here. And I can go here into Composer and go the other way. And I can go to Edit, and I can do Paste Here. And when I do Paste Here, it's looking at the text that I copied out of Word for Windows. And it brings up this dialog box. Just click on OK, and it will bring your text here into Composer. And there you have it. Boom. So you can also select this all and export all this as a PDF or export it as a JPEG or what have you. So you can go either way. You can go from Composer into Word or from Word into Composer. Or you can just type it in Gerber small text, whatever you want. A lot of different ways to accomplish the same thing. One other thing that I do want to make sure that I show as well is that sometimes you might just have sort of, I'm going to take this wireframe stuff up here and look at it. And I'm going to go to File, and there we go, File, and then Export again. And one of the things that we can do directly out of Composer is that you can go File and then Export, and I'm going to do Selected again. And one of the options for a JPEG export once again, and so this time I'm going to call it Dana 4. Dana, man, I'm rambling here, Dana 4. One of the options that we have for the image type as a JPEG is to do black wireframe or wireframe. And I might need to experiment. I'm going to do black wireframe. And you also have a choice of your line width. So instead of exporting this filled, it's going to export just the wireframe into dana4.jpg. And I might have to come back and do regular wireframe. Sometimes I have to flick between the two. But I'm going to do black wireframe. We'll see how that looks. And you do have control over the thickness of your wireframe. So I'm going to go ahead and leave my resolution where it is. And now I exported it. I'll do F10 and dana4.jpg. I'll bring that back in again. And let's see. Et voila. Survey says, there you go. You have just the wireframe in the form of a JPEG. Why do we like JPEG? Because it is not live vectors that somebody can open up in another design program and use the design as live vectors. This is a picture. So what you're doing, you're showing the representation of your wireframe without being susceptible to somebody being able to take that design from you. Okay? Is that good?
Mm-hmm.
You like?
I like.
Okay. Beautiful. I could go on for a long time, and I will continue, but I'll say it again. If anybody has to go, I completely understand, and you will get a copy of the webinar. So, but if you're just like raptly listening to me, of course, I encourage you to stay on as well. I want to go through shape effects and some other things as well in my PowerPoint again. So let's see. Border tool surround, space to evaluate. We talked about that. Import vector clip art. I don't know if we did that, but I want to show some more stuff. We did embed images, bitmap fill, distortion. Dimensions I would like to do. We did some exporting, which I like. JPEG is PDF, PDF Word. So I will do some vector effects, and then if you have any questions, I'll entertain questions, and maybe we'll have to do part 2 or something like that. But I'll do some vector effects real quick. And when I say vector effects, it's basically the ability to add and subtract objects from each other. So to start off, I'm going to take this text, and remember before we did this spacing. I'm going to do my character spacing here, and I'm going to have these guys overlap each other. And this is just to show that you can do contouring and vector effects very quickly and easily. So if you want to get just the outline of all these guys, you can go into Tools, Effects, Contour. And we'll talk about some of these settings, different settings here in a moment. But automatically, just by doing Tools Effects Contouring, you get all of this stuff contoured together all at once. So again, I was at the ISA trade show, and I don't know if he's on or not, but somebody was describing how they do the A and the B, and then they do the combination of the A and the B with the C, and then they do the combination of the A, B, and the C with the D as separate operations. I said, oh, no, you can do it all at once. And so hopefully he learned how to save a little bit of time there. The other nice thing, again, because of reaction, I can go back in here. Instead of A, B, C, D, I can do Thursday. And it's going to automatically change my text and automatically recontour it because it's part of that reaction tree. So to sort of talk about that whole discussion about reaction and things, kind of happening funny with reaction, when you double-click on something and you see these effects that are built together, you want to try to keep those together as much as possible to have reaction work best for you. So if you start to do things like take pieces out, like if I take the inside of this D out of here and I put it over there and then I start to build a new reaction tree, I've just basically potentially made my life miserable in terms of using reaction. So because it still thinks that it's part of this word Thursday, is part of that old reaction tree. So if I double click on it, you see that, okay, Thursday contour effects, it rebuilds. Sorry, if I double click on it and I just kind of regenerate it, it brings it back in there because it thinks that it's part of this Thursday graphic. But if I move it off and I start to build other things around it, so if I go into outline and I outline that guy and then I do a distortion on this or something like that, you're going to start, you're basically building, you've grown a new tree, to sort of use the reaction tree analogy. So, if I do a distortion on this, and things are going to start to get confused for the poor reaction tree, because when I double click over here, so anyway, I'm discouraging you from taking parts of a reaction graphic and starting a sort of a new tree, because things are going to get confused very quickly. So now you see that I have Thursday with this other stuff built into it in the middle, and things can get very confused and very ugly very quickly from there as you start to pull things apart. So what can you do as an alternative? Of course, sometimes you want to be able to borrow a graphic. What you can do is, like for example, to break this group or this combine, what I'm doing is holding down my Control key, and that's breaking my group. What I can do, if I hold down the Control key, it also makes me a copy. If I move with the Control key, it's making a copy of that graphic. So I still have my original inside of the D over here, but I have a new version over here which has been automatically converted to objects. So now I can do whatever I want to over here on the inside of my D, and I'm not affecting my original reaction tree. So I would encourage you to do something like that, or to make a copy of the entire graphic and delete everything that you want except for the inside of the D, et cetera, et cetera. So maintain your original tree, and that's going to be kind of untouchable unless you continue to build things off of the entire tree. Make a copy, paste it over here, delete the stuff you want, convert it to objects, or just grab it by doing a Control copy, and then build your other stuff off of this as your base and leave him alone as your original, if that makes sense. So that's a little bit about reaction. The other thing I want to show down here in terms of adding and subtracting shapes together, this is probably something that you might encounter where you're having multiple pieces of artwork. You can select them both at the same time and again go into the go into the Tools menu and go into Effects. And we have Contour down here. We have two versions of Contour, I think starting with Omega 5. So I'm just kind of using the defaults here, and I'm going to click on Continue. And you notice that it kind of removes some of these inside components here, which is not necessarily what you want. You might want these ribbons, these double ribbons to continue. So what you can do, you notice in the Contour dialog box, you have this checkbox, Use Pre-5.0 Logic. If I use that one, you notice that, oh, hey, it kind of gives me a more complete result, where it's just removing these intersections over here and over here where these specific double lines intersect each other. So I just want to point out that we have two versions of contouring logic, either Use Pre-5.0 Logic on or off, that can be important for the types of artwork that you guys are using, because you have a lot of double-lined artwork where you might want to keep the double lines and not throw out everything on the inside. Good. Cool. Good?
Good.
Excellent.
Good.
Say that again?
I'm good.
Okay, good. Shadowing and things like that. Again, we have a whole bunch of shadowing capabilities. Just want to talk about just shadowing, and hopefully I don't cover anything that's too rudimentary. But you go to Tools, and then we have Shadow. I just want to point out a couple quick things about shadowing. Again, we have the Apply button, so and you have composites and partial. So if you want to look at something, say you want to do a drop shadow, you can click on Apply in Omega 5.0 and later, and you can kind of see what the effect is going to be within the context of your design. With Omega 6.5, I can hold down my Control key and use my mouse wheel and zoom out and zoom left or right if I want to as well, just to give me a little better perspective on my shadow when I'm using my Apply. The other thing too that I like to show is that we also have this relief capability. So I'm going to zoom in on my shadow, and what relief does, it adds a little gap between your original and your shadow. And we have two versions. We have Surround, which has a variable gap. So I'm doing the Surround shadow first. So it basically, if you do look at this, you see that, Surround has a consistent gap around it because it basically does an outline and does the shadow afterwards. If you do Directional, you're going to see that I'm going to have a variable gap as I go around my shadow. So you see it's more narrow at the beginning and at the end than it is in the middle. I typically use Surround just because I think it's a little more consistent and more predictable. And again, I can go ahead and change this to be a 0.035, click on Apply, and I can see my effect and just get it fine-tuned nice and quickly, and just save a couple clicks. Every click, through the course of the day, if you can save yourself 100,000 clicks, you'll save 6 years in the course of a day, right? I joke. All right, good. So anyway, I think one of the things that I didn't cover extensively is Detail Edit, and the other one is Raster to Vector. But I do have some other webinars, and because, again, as I said, I'll send a link to a recording of this webinar, but I'll also send links to my Detail Edit webinar that I've done before, and I think I've covered Raster to Vector in some other webinars. So I'll send some Raster to Vector information as well. But let me open it up to questions. If anybody has to go, thank you so much. I'm sorry about our rocky beginning, but I appreciate everybody who did hang in there with us, and hopefully you learned something along the way. So any questions? Let me open it up, and if you guys got some questions, I'll stay on and entertain your questions.
I have a question. It doesn't regard what you're doing right now.
Okay, sure.
Your tools on top, where it says the font name and your justification and all that, all those tools up there?
Yes.
I know you can go to Tools option and select what you want, okay? And then I think, hit Apply or something. You
mean if you want the toolbars to show up? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, but I want to see exactly where I put them all the time. And I have a dual monitor, or if I minimize my screen or sometimes turn it off, turn it back on, my tools are all different again.
Yes, okay. So I'm going to guess that you have something before Omega 6.0. Is that true?
I have 6.0.
You do have 6.0. Okay. That was one of the things that we actually tried to improve in Omega 6.0. So let me see if I can show you real quick. So if you want to add different toolbars or get rid of toolbars, you can do that by going to the View menu actually, and then down here you have Toolbars. So I'm going to turn on a whole bunch of toolbars just kind of randomly, and then I'm going to put them into a particular location, and I'm just randomly picking a bunch of them. So whatever. So I have 6 toolbars turned on, and they're all sort of randomly placed, and I'm going to maximize my screen here, and I'm going to put them in bizarre locations, just hopefully to illustrate a point without embarrassing myself. But that's the beauty of a webinar, once again. I can embarrass myself in front of people. Giggle, giggle. So we'll just sort of make a mental note of where I put some of these toolbars. Okay, so I have my dimensioning toolbar on the right side and my shape creation toolbar on the right side. In Omega 6.0 and Omega 6.5, if you go to the window, what you can do is save as layout. And you can go ahead and actually name the layout as you want it to be. And oh, by the way, I have my offset distance over here on the left under my main toolbar. So I'm going to make this a new layout, and I'll call this Thursday again. So my layout name is Thursday. So I'll say OK. And now I have that saved with all these toolbars, okay?
Okay.
Boom. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to save this, and I'm going to close Composer. Alt File, Close. And I'm going to close Composer again. Too many composers. Man, how'd you get so many composers? All right, let me start Composer again. And first of all, it should remember my toolbar layout as I closed it. I had two composers going there, so it might get confused. But second of all, you notice that I have my layout sort of preserved from where I was when I closed out my window. And just to make sure, and again, we added this in Omega 6.0, you can go ahead and you can load a layout if you want to. So just to sort of show before and after, no toolbars, maximum work surface, that's what I'm going to do. That was one of my previous ones. So you notice that everything sort of disappeared based upon the ones that I added. But if I want to go ahead and go back and load my layout that I just created, there's Thursday, and it has all of my toolbars. It has my my offset over there. It has my construction. Hopefully, where's my I think let me load it again. I'll go because my window wasn't maximized. Windows and then load layout again. Thursday, and I guess this guy should have been over here, but maybe it was because I maximized and minimized or something like that. So let me go Window and save as layout Thursday. Anyway, you get the point that since Omega 6.0 under the window menu, you should have the ability to save layouts and even to restore layouts as well. So here's Reset Layout or Reset Layout to Default. What Reset Layout is going to do is going to reset it to the state of the toolbars when Composer was last closed. All right, so you have Reset Layout to Default, which is the factory default. Or you can also save a layout and load a layout if you want to as well. Okay?
I was always going under Tools Options.
Ah, yes, and I understand that. Okay. But in terms of the windows and the window locations, save layout, load layout, and reset to default. And if you want to add toolbars and things, you go to the View menu and then Toolbars, and then you can turn them on and off to your heart's content. Save a new layout, call it Friday if you want to. Or if you have different employees who prefer different layouts, you could do that. On Friday, of course, there would be no tools because you don't feel like doing anything.
I know it sounds petty, but it's irritating, especially when you have, 3 computers, you go from one to the other, and all the keys are different, and it's like, oh my God, where?
No, it's not petty at all. It's I completely understand.
Super, thank you.
Oh, not at all. And by the way, the other thing too, I can't show it here because I'm only sharing one screen. But this whole thing with the apply buttons, like if I go here and I type in some text, gobbledygook. Oh, it's got to be uppercase gobbledygook. And then I go into my outline dialog box. I can take this outline dialog box and put it on my second monitor. So now I have my Composer work surface completely unfettered by any of these dialog boxes, and I can still apply it. So even though you can't see it, I'm going to change my outline value to be 1 inch and then apply it. So this is on my second monitor. So if you do have multiple monitors, you can put your these dialog boxes off onto a different monitor and really maximize your work surface. Again, in terms of the contextual designing, it's really nice. And
I didn't understand that.
Okay, sure. You didn't understand the apply button?
No, I mean, okay, dual monitors. What's that box you're dragging around? Okay, the outline. Oh, you can move that to a different.
Yeah, so I have my outline dialog box, and remember before I was showing how you can apply things.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make a really big outline, a 5-inch outline, right? And with this apply button, I stay in my dialog box, but I'm still able to see the results, so I can go back in and type in a new value. So all I'm saying is right now my outline dialog box is kind of it's obscuring my graphic. So if you do have multiple monitors, you can take the outline dialog box or the warp dialog box or the fit text to path dialog box, what have you, and you can put it on a second monitor. And you can apply it, and you can see everything on the Composer work surface, but still have the ability to apply your effects and apply your outlines and things. Okay? I just can't show it because I'm only sharing one monitor.
Gotcha.
All right. Cool. All right, fit text to path is another one. I'll send a fit text to path or fit shapes to path because we have the ability as well to file recent MNet webinar. Man, I got to work on my spelling. All right, so some of the things that I had before. Oh, that was actually the wrong file. File, open. Monument, stone, monument features.
Hey, Dana, while you're doing that, I want to say thank you for doing this. I got to go, and I'll be looking forward to the email.
All right, I'll send that email out. And anyway, Fit Text to Path is another webinar link that I'll send to you as well. So I'll probably just call it a day here as well, and thank everyone profusely and apologize profusely once again for my rocky beginning. And I hope you have a great Friday and a nice weekend.
You also
Can I just ask one more question?
Yeah, please do. Absolutely. Go ahead.
When you were doing your front to back stuff, is there a way to see the stacking order, or is it always just to the front or always to the back?
No, you are absolutely correct that there is a way to see the stacking order. So let's see. Let me close this out. Nothing personal. There we go. All right. So first of all, we have actually I'm going to start fresh if that's all right. I'm going to make just a box, and I'll make some other object, the letter T, and maybe a circle or an oval. All right. So in Composer, make them different colors, gray, whatever, and white. Well, not white, yellow. There we go. All right. So in the Arrange menu, let me make him actually black so we can see him better. There we go. You can right-click. So you select the object that you want, and you can tell it to go to front and to back. But you can also right-click, and front to back, you see that you can also tell it to go back one if you want to. So I have the circle selected. I'm going to tell it to go back one. It's going to go between the T and the yellow rectangle. Okay, so that's one way that you can do it. If you have a more complicated design, things start to get more dicey, because it gets harder to figure out which, to front, to back, whatever it might be. So let me make some additional characters here. B, C, D, E. And there's an even better way. You can have absolute control over everything. So I'm going to make also a big rectangle and make that a sort of beige color, or whatever color that is. Vista yellow. All right. If you're familiar with using a layer, if you use any Adobe products, you're probably familiar with layer capabilities. But if you go to the View menu, we have Show Layer Manager. And the Layer Manager is sort of a snapshot of the objects that are in your job. So you can see that we have the shape, we have text E, D, C, shape. And if you do an outline or a shadow, it'll say that it's an outline object or whatever it might be. But the neat thing about the Layer Manager, even if I take all of this, I'm going to go F2 and I'm going to do Shift F9, and I'm going to stack everything. So it's all going to be one big jumbled mess all behind that one object there. So, but what you can do is actually select things in the layer tree, and you can drag them up to front, or you can drag them down to back. So you have absolute ultimate control, and you can even see when you click on it in the layer tree is that it selects it. So I'm going to select this shape, and I'm going to bring it so it's up in front of that other shape. Or I'm going to select this big box, and you don't have to select in the layer tree. You can also select on the work surface, and you notice that it correspondingly highlights in the layer tree. And I can drag this down if I want to as well. So now my big Vista yellow box is just moving behind incrementally behind each one of these other objects. So you have very good, very granular control over your to fronting and your to backing based upon the layer tree, or again just selecting something and telling it to move to front or to back one. But the layer tree is the ultimate control, really. Okay?
Okay. Yep. Okay.
Make sense?
Yep.
Great.
Thank you.
No problem. All right. Any other questions?
The thing that you were trying to show before, where you were doing tiled fills.
Yes. Yes.
Does that work? Does that work in 5, or is that only in 6?
Showing the tiled where you mean the thing that I just did a clipping path? Is that what you mean?
not the clipping pathway. You said there was a different way other than clipping pathway.
Yeah, there is a better way, and we introduced that in Omega 6. And I can show you that. I'd have to pop out of my Omega CS mode into Omega CP mode. But again, if you have Layout Station and you're at version 6, or if you have Omega CP and you're at version 6 or later, then you can do this. So let me go ahead. I'm sorry?
I'm in 5, so I wouldn't be able to do it myself then.
Okay. Well, I'm going to show it. I'll show it anyway, just using a very, very obvious graphic as the tile. Okay. It's not a seamless texture. So I'm going to use this as my object that I'm going to repeat into this monument or this stone over here. So let me go ahead and show everything. And the way that you do it is, the first thing you need to do is, let me go to Tools Options first. Tools Options. Oh, and I already turned it off. Good boy. Nice. So what I can do is select my image, and I have to tell Omega that this is the image that I want to use as my repeating image. And you do that by going into the Image menu and then Set as Source Image. And then what you do, so it's saying, all right, I'm ready to work with this one source image. And what you can do is select your vector object that you want to repeat it into. So I'm going to select this outside piece of this stone. Do a Control copy, as I was just saying, because that's one big reaction tree. So I'm putting my money where my mouth is. So I'm going to use this as my outside object that I'm going to repeat this graphic into. So I'm going to go into the Image menu again, and I'm going to do Bitmap Fill. And it's neat because you can tell it how many repeats you want. So let's say I want it to repeat 5 times, and I want it to repeat in Y, which is up and down. So it's actually going to scale this guy automatically. It's going to repeat it 5 times to fit into my vector here. And it's going to also automatically give me enough repeats in the other axis. So it's going to fill up this vector object in the other axis. It's going to automatically group any of my vectors that I have selected. It's going to automatically bring them to front, and it's going to automatically apply a clipping path. So here we go. I'm going to do it on this guy. I should have 5 going up, and I don't know how many going across. Oh, my template object again, but that's okay. We'll fix that in a moment. Let me undo, undo, undo. All right, select him. Make sure it's process color. Okay, and I'm going to do it again. So I go to the Image menu, and I'm going to set as Source Image. I go ahead and select my vector that I want to repeat into. I go to my Image menu again, Bitmap Fill. I want to repeat it 5 times in Y, go. And also, I have a border around this object here, so shame on me for having the border. But you see what it did. It repeated it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times across. It did that calculation for me automatically. And again, if you have multiple vectors that you're repeating into, it's going to group those for you automatically. It's also going to make sure your matrix of images is to back, and it's going to apply your clipping path for you all automatically in one nice quick step. So that's what I was trying to show, but again, for Emulate, for Omega CS, you don't have the Image menu functionality. So, but if you do have Layout Station at 6.0 or Omega CP at 6.0, you can do that.
Okay.
Okay. So and just to show in wireframe, you can see that you have all these images there in the background. Okay, good.
So when you save the file,
yep.
Since you have it repeated, does that is that only one JPEG, or does it end up turning into a lot of JPEGs, so your file size gets larger?
In terms of file size, Composer does economize on an image. If Composer sees that you have one original image, whether it's a JPEG, TIFF, what have you, and it's called, let's say it's called Thursday.jpg, and if you repeat it 50 times, it's going to actually it's not going to repeat the original JPEG 50 times. It's going to use what we call the thumbnail of that JPEG, and it's going to use that JPEG 50 times, and it's going to make your file size substantially smaller than actually repeating that original JPEG 50 times. So you are correct that we do economize as much as possible when we save a PLT file, and also if you are printing, if you have a Gerber Edge, or if you're printing basically to the Gerber Edge, we also economize in our rendering of that graphic. We see that it's the same graphic used 50 times. We'll render it once and then just recycle that rendered information for the other 49.
Okay.
All right. Good. Good question.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? All right. See, I tired you guys out. I won.
Thank you very much.
I have a suggestion, Dana.
I would love to hear a suggestion. I'm always open to suggestions, and you're very welcome, by the way. And what is the suggestion?
In the I can't remember what it's called, the border toolbox, and when you radius the corner,
yes,
it sure would be nice if you could select which corner you wanted to radius rather than all 4 of them being radius.
Ah, okay, I understand. So it does this to all of them, you're saying, and you don't want that. Well, I can show you a way you can do something like that, though, if you want.
Yeah.
How's that sound?
Sure.
Okay, and it's quick and easy. So in this case, I have my border and I radiused my corners. If you go to the Detail Edit tool, the Detail Edit tool in Toolbar, let me close out that. There we go. And I'm just going to fly him out so we know what we're working with. We have 2 tools here. One of them is Sharpen Corner, and one of them is Round Corner. So because I already have round corners, I can take Sharpen Corner, and I can just sort of click and drag and sharpening those corners.
Yeah.
Is there
all right.
That, like if you want to round the corner so it rounds it the exact same, so you can do it on 2 corners the same way?
You sure can, absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn this off, and I'm going to say, so my type is now square. So right next to Sharpen Corner, we have Round Corner. So with Round Corner, you click and drag again, and you get the radius that you want. And then we have this little box that pops up here. It allows you to enter in the value of the radius. So if you know that you want that to be 4.25 inches, you now have a 4.25-inch radius on that guy. Now I have my first corner set, and it's using a 4.25-inch radius. If I want to apply this to just the opposite corner, don't click and drag, just click. And it automatically applied a 4.25-inch radius to the opposite corner.
Okay, that's great.
What's that?
I said, where were you 2 weeks ago?
Well, if you have a quick question like that, again, you'll have my email or what have you. Feel free to send me a quick email. I don't really do technical support. I can't help you with your megabytes and frigate jigs, but I can help you in terms of composer questions like that. I'll reply back to you as quickly as I can. Sometimes I'm in the office, sometimes I'm not. But
thank you.
All right, my pleasure. Okay, good. And again, don't click and drag. Once you have your original corner set, all you need to do is click on subsequent corners, and it's going to apply that radius. If I change this radius to something different, and now it's 11.850, again, I can just click on my other corner, and it's 11.850. If I click on an existing one that I already radiused, it's going to apply that new value. So now I can say, all right, no, I want it to be 2 inches, and you can apply it to the radius just by clicking. So you can click and drag to set the radius and then use your 2-headed arrow to adjust the radius, but click on subsequent corners to apply that exact same value to subsequent corners.
Cool.
All right.
Okay, I have to go. Dana, thanks very much. You've been a great help.
You're very welcome, and thanks again to everybody, and have a great day and have a great weekend.
You also. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.